live. Okay. All right, we are almost there,
Hi,
mate. You ready to
live
go?
is live.
There it is. Welcome to the Hybrid Hub chats, mate. Sebastian, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Always, mate. And for the listeners and viewers, thanks for being here as well. And Georgie and I are starting a new segment called the Hybrid Hub chats, and we're going to get some insightful, interesting people or in the health and fitness and sporting world, just to have a great discussion with them. And we're starting off with the one and only Sebastian Kienle. Sebastian, I'm going to actually we're going to work kind of backwards and actually start from the weekend. Sebastian, coming from an Ironman background, obviously, did his first HYROX on the weekend. How did that go, mate?
It's very tough for me to even answer that first question because I didn't really know what to expect. Like one day I saw like, oh yeah, man, my goal is to qualify for the elite 15 in this race. Then the other day I was like, my goal is to finish the race, like just to finish the race before they actually stop tearing down the wall ball zone the next day. So
Yeah.
it was a very wide spectrum of goals. So I don't really know what I can say. I think all in all, I would say it was exactly between those two extremes. So I guess I got what I should have expected. A tough competition, but more important, it was a lot of fun, and I got a very nice introduction into the high society
Yep.
and met a lot of good people. I loved the atmosphere. It was pumping, man.
Wasn't
I
it?
absolutely enjoyed it, and so therefore I will be back for more.
So that was my next question is, you've done one now. Um, do you think you'll do another one? Have you got sucked?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I'll do more.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Mate,
No, I mean yeah, so to give you a little bit more insight of that, why I even started it, it was so I retired from professional triathlon after almost 30 years in the sport of triathlon at the end of last
wow.
year. And my plan was, I mean, I still enjoyed a lot about being a professional and training every day and so on. But I was just I was just worn out. I knew it was over, but I still loved it. So therefore, I decided I still want to do some gravel racing this year, so some off road bike racing. And I knew to be a little bit better at that, I need to just get used to a different kind of pain again. Not the slowly grinding
Yeah.
pain that you get from an Ironman, but like really hitting the gas again and seeing some double-digit lactate numbers again and stuff. And I thought I'd just do some cyclocross racing, but it was just with a lot of logistics. And what I also kind of started to not hate, but what's really tough in triathlon is the traveling, and the traveling is not very easy if you travel with sometimes two bikes, two bags,
Yeah.
and with cyclocross it would have been the same. So therefore I thought like HYROX looks fun. It's a lot of it's very high heart rate. It's a lot of leg stuff, and so therefore, and then my videographer, he did it, and I was like, okay, let's try this, and ah, I was hooked pretty much instantly.
Yeah, and well, it's funny what you said before, Sebastian, about before the race, I'm assuming because of your competitive nature, you would have thought, oh, I wonder if the Elite 15 is a possible in my first race, or this and that. But it's the fear of the unknown, let's just say. It's it's an interesting one, and I speak to my athletes about this who are doing their first race. You can't compare it to anything else. And I said this to someone who did their first race on the weekend, is that um, the first HYROX race, I believe, doesn't necessarily, your first HYROX race doesn't necessarily count. What that means is you can learn so much about that first race that the second one or third, fourth, fifth is going to be so different in terms of the journey of it and how it feels as well, and you start learning to do it differently and pace yourself or do the stations a little bit differently and that type of stuff as well. Um, just to kind of, just for the listeners and the viewers, Sebastian Kienle, if you haven't heard of his name, I'd be quietly surprised if you haven't. He has been a all-time world champion Ironman back in 2014. Is that correct?
Yep.
I actually Googled you before, mate, and there was too many results to go through. There was too many, and correct me if I'm wrong. You won the World Championship Ironman in 2014. Did you win again, or was that your first? Was that your one and only Ironman World Champion?
Yeah,
Was
that was the one and only. For me, more important was the fact that um, I've raced there. I think not even 100% sure, minus the 2 COVID years. I think 10 times,
Yeah,
and I've always been in the top 10. And it's sometimes, I mean, especially in this sport, even to make it to the start line every year, is already a little bit of an achievement. But then I just had one did not finish, and yeah, that's definitely. I mean, for the outside world, it doesn't really count that much. But I mean, you probably also know that sometimes those things are not that important for you, and what's important for you is that you've been able to get yourself in the position to be able to win like 10 years in a row. And
yeah.
so I was able to do that. That's probably even more important for me than the one and only win I got out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying you qualified for the Ironman World Championship 10 years in a row, and all those 10 you came top 10.
Yep.
And
So it was another like I think three podiums in total, and yeah, so all of them within the top 10, and then obviously like a lot of other victories.
yeah,
Two times 70.3 world champion, and two times runner up 70.3, and three European long course titles. So yeah, it's a good pedigree, but
pretty good
yeah,
resume.
no
Yeah.
nobody gives you the inside line in the HYROX just because you're Ironman world champ.
Oh, that's exactly right, mate. And for the listeners and viewers, I had the pleasure to meet Sebastian on Friday night in our lobby of the hotel. I haven't told you this, Sebastian, but my partner Georgie and I were having dinner, and yourself and Florian Gas walked in from your shakeout run, or I'm pretty sure. And immediately I was a fanboy. I was a fanboy. I was like, oh my God, that can't be. you went upstairs, obviously, and then came back down. It was fascinating when you came over to me because I was so excited to meet you, and then you ended up telling us that that you had stumbled on our YouTube video, hence why you went to the Rock Zone OG in Hamburg. And no, it was great to meet you. And I've been following. I'm just from my end. I follow a lot of sports, but I do love following more so endurance sports more than anything, and obviously the Ironman world, even triathlon world. I just love diving into the athletes, and you've been one of them for many years for me. And I think just on that note about, I doubt, and you'd probably know this, I doubt there'd be any other athlete who has done 10 or has done 10 Ironman World Championships and have placed in the top 10. There's no one else, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Maybe back in the early 90s or so. But even then I mean, I know some guys that are better with the statistics of our sport than myself, but yeah, I mean, it's not that important that I in comparison to others, but it's just for yourself. I think to be consistent on a very high level. You know, sometimes people say like, oh yeah, but if you could trade all those top tens into another win, would you do that? And I would say maybe in some phases of my career, I would have absolutely made that trade. But when you retire, you know, the thing is what you really carry over into the afterlife is all the experiences. And man, I mean, there's no better feeling than being in a race and you realize like, oh gosh, you can't fulfill your original goal of getting another win, but then still find something to fight for.
Yeah.
That's sometimes so much more rewarding from a psychological standpoint than getting another easy win or something like that. So therefore, yeah, that's the only reason. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So, like, you use the word consistency, and I'll be honest, you are Mr. Consistent. Let's just call yourself that, because, you know, Ironman is probably one of the most grueling sports out there, whether you know, whether you've done one or not. You know, um, you know, the concept of as you've said, mate, the concept of the journey towards the Ironman World Championship every year is more important than the race itself, right? What was my big question for you, but I'm sure there's no secret, but what was your secret to sit here right now and say I was top 10 every year? What was your secret?
I think that it's not that one thing. At the end that you can kind of reinvent yourself every time that you find new reasons. You know, it's not that one reason why you do it. It's not I wanted to become world champion and afterwards I just kept continuing because I didn't know what else to do. It's more that you constantly find other reasons why you love it. And I think that's the same in pretty much every sport, that you really learn to work for the progress and not for the outcome, and that you enjoy that every day. And at the beginning of my career, I think like most young athletes, I was solely focused on the outcome and the result. I
Yeah.
just want to smash everybody, you know. It's you wanted to be the best. You want to make yourself a name and boost your ego. What else? and then over the years you realize like, oh, this success in the sport is your door to freedom, you know, to make your own decisions every day, to
Yeah.
live the life in a way that you imagine and where you can steer the ship, you know. It's, of course, it's still a lot about all the other factors, but basically you have it in your own hands. And I think that's
Mm.
something I learned to enjoy more and more. And if you want to call it a secret, then I would say it's the ability to constantly find new reasons. Yeah.
Wow, that's huge, mate. I love that. How did you get into triathlons and Ironman when I think I read you got into it at a very young age.
Yeah, when I got into triathlon, there was not even a real professional world in the sport of triathlon. And yeah, I started triathlon when I was 8 years old, and we made the school newspaper where everybody had to write down what he wants to become when he is growing up. Actually, because I have a presentation later, I have this right here, and I can show you. So that's the school newspaper.
Yeah.
1991 till 1995, and I think it's very difficult to read and find the name, but all the kids have
Yep.
to write down what they want to become.
Yeah.
And there's like dudes that want to become like private detectives and what astronauts, and but also some really realistic stuff like car mechanic or something like that. And I wrote down professional triathlete.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and my teacher back then told me, oh no, you know, it has to be something realistic, something where you can actually make a living out of it and pay the bills. And
Right.
turns out I think I was the only one who actually managed to really become what he wrote down
Yeah, that's probably
in
right.
in this like 100-year-old newspaper, school newspaper. So yeah, that's the story. I think the sport kind of found me in a way. You know, I was a very active kid. You can also call it ADHD or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so therefore the sport was just a perfect, you know, well for me to release all the steam. And yeah, a triathlon it's a little bit in some ways it's similar to HYROX because if you try harder, the result is better. I
Yes.
mean, that goes for a lot of the things that go into it. Not all of them, obviously, but for a lot of them. And I really love that. You know, that it's in some sports, let's say table tennis, which I played. If you try harder, chances are you make more mistakes and you
Right.
get frustrated, you get more angry, and then you make more mistakes. In
Yeah.
triathlon, when you're a little bit angry and you try harder, the result is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
It's
it was just the perfect thing. If you're an angry little kid, then yeah,
yeah. It's an interesting statement, that one, because I always say to myself, training and training towards a race, and also to my athletes, a Hyrox race will never lie to you. If you haven't done the work, you'll get spat out at the end. And
absolutely. I totally realized that when I tried to pull that flat, I realized I
I
just
yeah,
have done that once in my life, which was probably not enough.
that's exactly right. Exactly right. But that's the beauty of I'm gonna say, like, endurance sports like this, like whether it is Ironman or Hyrox now. Obviously, even when we just go into the simple form of like running and training for just running.
Yeah.
If you haven't done the work, you haven't done the work. That's how I got. That's how I got really stuck into Hyrox. I played a lot of sport growing up, Sebastian, but I never made it. I wasn't really good at one particular sport until I stumbled across HYROX about 18 months ago. And due to the fact that I kind of have always proud myself on my hard work ethic, I've found a sport that is just all about that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's also what I love about it is HYROX is basically a training competition, more or less. You know, I mean, it's you put all sorts of stuff that you usually do to get fit for other sports into a competition,
Altogether.
and that's the reason also why I believe that it has such a great potential, because it doesn't have to be your only sport, you know. It doesn't matter what you do. If you play ice hockey, if you're a cross-country skier, triathlete, whatever. I think also with my experience now doing the first one, it's a great way to get yourself into shape also for another sport. Obviously, if you want to compete at a very high level, then you have to not do it
Dial.
to do something else later. Then you really have to focus on the sport itself. And yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean that's the way how I found myself into the sport. Is I thought like, yeah, it's a great way to get fit for something else. But now I'm pretty much in love with the training competition itself, if you want to call
Yeah,
it that way.
exactly. But it'll be interesting to get your opinion on this. There's a difference in my eyes between, let's just call it hard work and smart hard work. I've
Huh.
learned over time, because of my nature. I've I've always been able to work hard and it not be a thing. It's just my work ethic is just who I am, and having to train twice a day is just what I do. Full stop, period. It's not a I don't have to do much to do that. It's just what I do, right? I've learned over time, especially in the last 18 months being in HYROX, is that you can have that mentality of hard work, but you need to make sure that you are smartly working hard and in the right periods of time. I'll give you an example, and we can dive into this later. But I periodize my training now to the point where I don't do any compromise running until about 6 weeks until a race. Whereas a lot of HYROX athletes still think that they need to do so much compromise running 24/7, every week to get better at HYROX. But what I've learned is that you actually need to get better at the individual components of the race before putting it all together, right? And that kind of brings me back to your history with Ironman. Did you have to I'm assuming you did. Did you have to change the way you trained and obviously with different coaches, like over your long career? Did you just have to adapt on the fly as well as what I'm doing? Like changing the way you trained?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've doing the sport for 30 years. I've done the sport for more than 30 years, and so therefore, obviously, you're constantly adapting. Going back on what you just said, I mean, even just in the last 6 weeks, I definitely became a little bit of a student of the sport of of HYROX, because um, since you can only do so much training, and then you try to make it as smart as possible. And yeah, like you said, I think there's still a lot of experiment. It's an experiment phase in the sport,
Yeah.
because the sport of HYROX is still so young. Um, And yeah, just like you said, I think a lot of the people that I was following now, they yeah, they train really hard.
Mm.
But it's not necessarily they think it's just go as hard as you can in training sessions, and then the results will come in a race.
Mm.
But that it's the same in triathlon. You know, we have these athletes, and we separate them. It's like the workhorses and the race horses.
Yeah.
And the workhorses, they will outwork you on pretty much every given day. But then on race day, they're still the workhorse. You know, they can do another race the next day, but that's not what's required. You know, you don't need to be able to do another race next day. You need to win that one race. You need to be
That
the
one.
racehorse,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's the difference. And yeah, I think it's the same methods in pretty much all high high performance endurance based sports,
yeah.
is that you light the fuse from both ends, more or less. You do either like pretty easy work, or like super hard short work. And the closer you get to the competition, the more you go to the middle, and then boom, on race day,
There you go.
you
Yeah.
you light the firework. And yeah, in triathlon it's just the same. I mean, you don't do an Ironman in training. That's just not what you do. You're gonna smash yourself so hard in a race like that, that I mean, you need weeks and weeks to recover from that, not just from your body, but also mentally.
Mm.
So therefore, also when it comes to compromised running, you know, even that we haven't done that very often in training. Just really before a competition, and then you also have the stimulus from the competition itself, and therefore you get better and better over the year. And yeah, that's the idea in triathlon as
Yeah.
well. So
And
there's a lot of parallels.
yeah, absolutely. That is very similar to how I view HYROX now. Take us through, just because I'm such a nerd at programming and training. Take us through like a typical. Oh, sorry. We talk a lot about overall volume in HYROX as well. Take us through like a typical week of training for you.
I think that's the first thing why I kind of found HYROX interesting, is that when you train 15 hours in HYROX, I would say it's I think you have the chance to be at the very top, because
Yeah.
when you break that down, let's say you do 10 hours in total of running, that's already something like 140, 150K a week. I
Mm.
doubt that a lot of HYROX athletes run over 100K a week. I would say the average from what I've seen amongst the top guys is more something like 70K a week.
Yep.
So let's say that's something like, when you do a lot of breaks and you count that in, it's more like 7 to 8 hours a week. So that still leaves 7 to 8 hours for all the other stuff, like strength and stretching and stuff like that, and specific station workout. And since you have to get a certain intensity into the training, you can't do that much more. I mean, if it's off season, of course, I think you can do more volume, just like to get the base to later be able to do more intensive stuff. In triathlon, a 15-hour week is is a rest week.
Right,
I
right.
think the typical so the average week, I would say, is like 25 hours. But obviously there were weeks in my career where I was training above 40 hours, and that's without any of the recovery stuff, or stretching or something like that. It's just pure pure work, so minus rest and everything. And obviously the volume in that sport is like really high, but the intensity in such weeks is like really low, obviously. And it's a sport of a million reps, you know. It's not the sport of 12 reps or 3 reps. It's a
Yeah.
sport of a million reps. And yeah, so therefore that's it. I mean, you usually train, I would say it breaks down into maybe 80K of running a week, something like 600K on the bike, and maybe 30K of swimming, plus
30K.
maybe 2-3 hours of strength work. That would be like a high volume week. Obviously, like I said, the closer you get to competition, the lower the volume gets, or a little bit lower, and then you train more specific and with more race specific intensity. You still have to do some VO2 max efforts and stuff, but yeah, I mean, the race is 8 hours long, so
Yeah.
you have to do plenty of yeah, base and zone 2 work and so on. And in my last year, I definitely did a little bit less volume and way more in that, let's say, gray zone, where it's like really race specific, because I knew there's no other year coming. You know, you don't have to think about 2 or 3 years ahead and building that base or getting that high intensity in, so that you can later, you know, really lighten the firework in the middle. But therefore, I got used to this this fourth or fifth gear, you know, and that's the interesting thing with training now for HYROX, is that I really have to teach my body to use all the potential again, because Ironman is basically always a waiting game. You basically kind of wait until 6 hours into the race, then it kind of starts to hurt, and then you have to, you know, open the gas. And when you open the gas, that just means you're not getting slower. And when in HYROX, especially now for my first competition, I think I was like really way too conservative, because I was like, okay, don't smash yourself on the first 2 stations and 2 runs, and then you're gonna struggle a lot. But I realized, no, I can go from where I come. I have to go way harder, and because all the coaches, they constantly tell their athletes, like, yeah, be very conservative on the first 2 runs and 2 stations. And I agree, but it really depends on where the athlete is coming from. You know, if the athlete is coming from a super endurance background, that's probably not the right way. Then you have to look at it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So just on your HYROX on the weekend then, right? And you just stated that you went out conservatively, right? Sebastian, you're, and for the viewers, the listeners, Sebastian did men's pro. He went straight into pro. All right. Men's pro in a time of 109.13. All right. Very, very good, above average result for a men's pro. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going through your running splits. Okay. We'll just hit everyone with the running split size. So your run one was 320, run two 342, run three 357, 352, 4 on the nose 351, and then 358 and 413. So what you're saying is those first two, do you think you were very conservative, were you?
Yeah, so first of all, I think since you have been in the race as well, so the first run was not the same as the others. I would say, yeah, you saved there about 15 seconds on the first run, because the start was not where the rock zone out was later in the race.
Yep.
So I think what you have to do is compare the second run with the other runs. That's the same distance then. And yeah, I think I was in my running overall, I was very conservative. I thought because I knew especially that the wall balls at the end is, I mean, something that that's gonna be really, really tough for me.
Yeah.
The first time I picked up a ball was something like 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so I knew when I'm not overly fatigued, my idea was like, okay, I break them down in like maybe a 25 for the first set, and then 20s, and then the last one 15 or something like that. That was my idea. And I absolutely thought that this is like realistically, if I'm not overdoing on the run. So therefore, I've been like really, really holding back. I mean, this is not even Ironman pace, where I run a full marathon after 180K. But that didn't pay off at all. I was like really surprised because I was like relatively relaxed going into the wall balls, but it doesn't matter. After the first 10, I was like, fuck, let's do sets of 5.
Yeah.
And it felt like a whole century that took me to to finish those 100. So I think I'm just not, the potential is just not there. I just haven't done enough, of those two. So I think I could have. It's always easy to talk about a race after it, but I think I could have easily run 3 minutes faster in total without having any other results at the station itself, because what really held me back on the stations was not the heart rate I was going into the stations, but just that I wasn't able to even, have the strength to do the stations properly. Especially sled pull. That's where I think I kind of lost the most time. It's just technique and strength that was completely lacking, but it wasn't because my heart rate was too high to go in there. And I think that's a really something that sets me apart from a lot of the other guys, is most of them, they get really excited when they run in front of the crowd, and they go really hard, way too hard, too hard on the ski erg, and then they have already built like so much fatigue that they struggle on the stations. But for me, that's not the problem. It's just that I don't have the potential on the stations, especially on 3 of the stations. Also on the burpees, I know that I'm not able to use the full potential of my heart and lung capacity, because the technique is just not good enough yet. So yeah, a lot of the guys, they have the strengths and they're just lacking endurance capacity to really use the strengths. For me, it's the other way around. I just don't have the strengths yet to use the full capacity of my endurance. So that's what I'm gonna work on.
And it's interesting, Sebastian. I view the stations of HYROX as skills, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, what you're saying is, due to the fact that you didn't have a lot of time to practice your skills, they suffered a little bit, or not. I'm looking at them now, mate. They're actually very sound. Apart from the ones that you just stated with the wall balls, the sled pull, and at the end of the day, you know this because you've been there, done that in terms of competition and training for something. The more you can practice the skill now, the better you'll get. I think for you, from my end as a coach and let's just say an elite HYROX athlete, it's 2 things for you: looking at your sled pull, right, and then also your wall balls. It's funny because your farmer's carry was actually pretty quick. And what I'm getting at is that I wonder if it was due to the fact that your sled pull was 549, I wondered if it was somewhat a strength, upper body strength. The farmer's carry is obviously a strength endurance and grip strength, yeah, sure. But if I were you and if I was coaching you, we'd be going through a lot of upper body pulling training, and also getting behind or getting under the barbell and doing a lot of front squats for the purpose of getting strong in that wall ball position.
Yeah, that's
exactly, like you haven't done that. You haven't had to squat. Like I'm assuming you did some sort of strength when you were training, but with the 9 kilogram wall ball and also the skill of throwing and catching, you've never done that. So
that's the thing with the tricky thing with HYROX. What I found out, if wall balls would have been the first station for me, I think the overall time would already be like 2 minutes faster.
right,
Because
yeah.
For me the wall balls is the station that requires the most skill, so to say.
Yeah.
It's the most complex movement of them, and also the station where if you lose your technique, like your effort goes through the roof, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
catch the wall ball wrong, oh man, you need so much more energy and to get it up there again. And it's, let's say if rowing would have been the last station, that's just something where you can completely empty your tank. And
Yeah.
it's not like, of course there is technique involved for sure. It's not just pull that shit, but it's different than wall balls, right? You don't have to catch and handle the ball right and so on. And so for me, what I really realized is my technique is like it's very questionable when I get tired. It's like really bad, and therefore the effort goes even higher to just be able to do that. So I mean, for all those guys that are watching and think where they can improve on, I think what I did for now was just to practice the wall ball itself to get the technique right and so on. But later, if you really want to perform well in a competition, yeah, you have to do compromised wall balls. Like go on that air bike, like get your heart rate through the roof, get into like a 2-digit lactate, and then you should do your wall balls, because it's such a different beast if you do it compromised than when you just, okay, let's do like 100 wall balls. It's relatively, I would say, relatively easy when you're fresh, because the
Mate,
technique is fine.
I can't remember the last time I did a wall ball fresh.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Or
I
if you do it, then I mean, of course, there's like 100 different ideas on how to make them harder.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and because I wasn't able to do any wall balls at home, I started to do them on the K box. I don't know if you have seen that one. It's yeah, it's like a eccentric machine where you have like a belt and you do squats, and just was holding the wall ball, which was kind of good, but that was not where I was lacking strength. It wasn't the legs. It was just like the process of catching and throwing and using your arms and holding your arms up. So yeah, like you said, I think there's a lot of different ways to get better at it, and I will do all of them.
What about the skill of running? Like I come from a running background, and I did a lot of cross country growing up, track and field, but I've ran 6 marathons, and obviously you would understand the process of the marathon is more important than the actual marathon. So I've had 6 opportunities to train for a marathon. And I've learned the hard way, but also I've learned over time the importance of skill acquisition when it comes to running. How much do you think understanding the skill of running is important for, let's just say, running improvement?
Oh, I mean, yeah, without a doubt, one of the most important things on a variety of levels and reasons. Because um, let's start bottom to the top. I mean, the most important thing is if your technique and your the skill of running is just not there, you will always be limited in the training, because you're probably either not able to get the required volume or the required intensity. So if I mean, and that's the difference when I look at let's say CrossFit and HYROX. If I see a CrossFit athlete running,
Yeah.
it always looks kind of funny to me, because
Yeah.
it's just they're running right like robots, you know. I mean, yeah, it's just a different thing than
Yeah.
seeing a runner run, you know. And that's what I mean is, um, you have to be. It's very simple. If you don't run, let's say, a 13.5 seconds or 100 meter, it's going to be very difficult for you to run 200 meters sub 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you won't run, let's say, sub 250 for a K. If you can't run a sub 250, you can't run 15 minutes on 5K, and so on. So there has to be you have to be able to produce a certain level of speed in running, and then at the same time you have to do a certain level of volume in running. And in both ways, you will be limited if your skill is not there of efficient running. But then, especially in HYROX, it's even more important because um, for me, I think that goes for a lot of people, but I think it's about to change. Is the most people need to recover from the stations
Yeah.
during the run. As the sport gets more competitive and so on, it will be more even. But I think certain stations, you can't. I mean, you kind of can pace yourself, but then you have to make breaks. Let's say sled push, right? I mean, you're either moving that thing or you're not moving that thing, and so just like to finish the station, and the same goes probably for lunges. Of course, you can stand still and recover from it, but it doesn't really make it that much easier. You know, you're still standing there with a 30-kilo sandbag on your shoulders, so you have to just get it going. Same goes for the farmer's carry.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to go to certain intensity, and you have to recover from it during the run. And if your technique and your skill is not there with running, you can't do that. You have no chance. You
Yeah.
will have to go that much slower to recover from it, and then your time is shit. So
Yeah.
therefore, yeah, it's very important to work on running efficiency, because especially when it comes to compromised running, it's even more important than in pure running. That I mean, I know that very well from my sport, where you run a marathon compromise. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, at the start of this year, or sorry, at the start of the Hyrox season this year, which was August, September, I decided to do a marathon. So I only had 6 weeks to train for it, did what I did what I could do to pretty much do a 3-hour marathon on the nose, right? And I was happy with that. But the reason behind that was because I wanted to set myself up for the best opportunity to run well in this season. And what I'm getting at here is Hyrox is a running race. Hyrox is a compromised running race, but the most important thing is running and getting better at running. I've been working with my coach a lot lately about trying to get a lot more power and traction off the ground. So I'm doing a lot of I'm doing a lot of power, like bounding work and even skipping and trying to get more explosive from foot to ground contact, you know. And I personally think for the listeners or viewers, if you are interested in trying to get better at running, you need to source someone who can analyze your running very specifically and give you some guidance behind what are the best, I guess, ideas to help you get more traction off the ground, let's just say. Sebastian, just because I'm a bit of a nerd, I want to know what is your fastest marathon, a sole marathon all by itself, and then your fastest marathon off the bike?
I've never run a sole marathon, and
I thought that was going to be the answer. I don't know why, because I've heard some Ironman come out and say, "Oh, we've actually never done a marathon all by itself."
Yeah,
And
I mean, there's a lot of
it just intrigues me that you haven't. And I'm like, well, it makes sense because you never do it. It's not in your race. You're always going to be fatigued. But yeah, so what's the reason and why?
Yeah, so a sole marathon takes a ton out of you, and it's probably like when it comes to just I mean, it changed a lot with the super shoes and stuff, but even now it causes a lot of damage to the muscles, and there's a really easy explanation to that is when you do it compromised, you know, when you do it after 100K on the bike, your energy storage is just running on empty already, and therefore you can't go to a certain level when it comes to speed and pushing yourself. So therefore you can't even cause that much muscle damage, versus when you run a sole marathon, you're running that with a full tank, you can use all of your energy storage, you're running it way faster, you cause way more damage to your muscles. And there's no reason why you want to do that. Just for fun is not the answer in a professional sport.
Yeah.
So if there's no reason to do it, then you just don't do it. And so therefore we never done one. I think my fastest in an Ironman was 2:43. Not 100% sure, because also there, you know, the times, they doesn't really matter that much. The overall time is important for sponsors and media and stuff, but for the athletes, it's more about, you know, winning the race, because especially in a marathon, in an Ironman, it depends so much on the conditions and what you have done before that. It would be relatively easy to run that marathon a good bunch faster, but then you have to go easy on the bike. But that's not the overall goal. The overall goal is to win the race, and whatever it's required to do that, you'll do it. And if it means that you have to break away from the field on the bike, then you'll try to do that. And therefore you're not running a faster marathon. So for me, the reason why I was successful in the sport is basically because I was most of the times the best when the bike was hard, and I was still able to get together decent runs. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you would rather, when you're about to race and you see the course map for the first time, you'd rather a really hard bike?
No, it's not that easy to answer, because there's so many other factors. Usually you would always say there's this very sweet spot on the bike where you still be able to use a lot of fat and don't burn too much carbs, and also because aerodynamics and all these kind of things play a huge role in cycling. There's really a sweet spot where you should bike, but at the end it's all about race dynamics and stuff like that. So therefore there's no easy answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I was going to ask you as well. It just came to mind then. Who is your not favorite? What's the right word? Who's your um favorite competitor in the Ironman world? The racer, or you just love racing against?
I mean, that's an easy easy question. It's Jan Frodeno.
Yeah.
He is Olympic champion, really the god of triathlon, three-time Ironman World Champion. And the reason why I love to race against him is because, he's always the top favorite when he goes into a race, and therefore there's nothing to lose for you. I mean, if you beat him, it's an absolutely sensation. If you don't beat him, that's kind of what what everybody expected before the race, and therefore it was such a great goal always to beat him, because it's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, he's a very fair competitor. You never have to look around if he's drafting or doing anything shady. And I'll see a lot of like parallels with my sport, with the sport of HYROX, because at the end it's about you. And but there's still stuff like in our sport there was always discussions about drafting. Now
Yeah.
in the sport of HYROX is discussion of hand placement during a burpees or something like that.
Yeah.
And also in HYROX now, I think with Hunter there's a guy that's, I would say, totally different than Jan, but then it's also a little bit similar. Yeah, it's quite interesting and fun to follow.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Just because I'm a nerd again, what's Lionel Sanders like?
Yeah, I mean I mean, I could have also named him as the favorite
Yeah,
guy I'm racing against, because I mean, he is an absolute beast. Like one of the guys that is probably able to kill himself with sport. I mean, it's interesting because in another interview, like I got asked who are the guys in the triathlon world that would probably be the best in a HYROX race. And um, I mean, obviously, the guy that would probably perform the best and would maybe even without any major training would break an hour would be Christian Blumenfeld.
yeah,
Um, Current Olympic champion. He has one of the highest VO2 max ever measured in sport. He's not a super lightweight guy,
no,
so he brings something to the table when it comes to the sled push or something like that. And then but then it's also Lionel, because he's just such an animal when it is about to get ugly in a race.
yeah,
He's just shifting into another gear. It's just like a pit bull when he smells blood.
yeah,
He's getting excited. So yeah.
exactly, man. Yeah, I do love following Lionel on social media and YouTube. You can tell he's just so competitive, and he's a racer. I talk about this because the HYROX Elite 15 system has changed from time based to get into the Elite 15 to racing. So which is great, mate, because as Hunter does say, it's different. Like horse versus course. Sorry, course versus course is different from horse versus horse, right?
Absolutely, I can't agree more. I mean,
Yeah.
even with me being absolutely newbie, I'm hearing people constantly talk about the carpets and the corners and the run laps and the rock zones and this
Yeah.
and that. And does it really matter? No, for like 95% of the people, it doesn't really matter. It's the same when you run marathon and you want to run a PB, you know that not every course is the same and not every condition is the same. It can be warm, it can be colder, blah blah blah. So don't focus too much on your time. But when you're racing as a professional and you have to qualify via your time, it really does matter. It's really important. And then you have a race like Maastricht, where it seems to be, let's say, fast conditions. And I mean, from what I heard from the most people, the race in Manchester wasn't like a really fast race when it came to the conditions. So yeah, I think that's really important that on the highest level of the sport, it's much more exciting and much better to compare if it's horse versus okay, here we have a list with times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so therefore I'm in a, yeah, I definitely always would favor a scenario where you compete against each other for the qualifications via your placements in a race versus okay, let's just compare all the times of the whole season.
Correct. Yeah. Agreed. Mate, just due to time restrictions,
Yeah,
we
I was about to say I'll
might have
to
to wrap it up.
leave soon. Yeah.
My last question is what's next for you? Have you got another race booked in? Do you and also do you see yourself really dialing in and actually having a crack at this sport?
Yeah, an answer that I have to a question that I have to answer to myself in the next couple of days and weeks. The main goal and objective is still to just get fit for the gravel season and for the gravel racing. So that has to be my main focus, because that's where my sponsors and my partners are, and that's where yeah, I would still see myself. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, I have to say. And I'm excited to find out what I can squeeze out of myself. And even if it just stays a hobby, it's just it's fun. It's a good way to stay fit and to give myself a reason. I mean, I've touched on that. It's especially after retiring from professional sport, let's say like 50% retirement of professional sport. It's good to have a goal to keep going and stay fit, and I mean HYROX definitely could be that purpose, serve that purpose. And so yes, I think I will be in Vienna, and I'm not 100% sure yet what I will do, but I will be there just because I have a sponsor appointment there, most likely. So therefore, we'll be around anyway, and then maybe I'll test myself in the open category, just to gain more experience and learn what I can do better. I think most of it I already know, but yeah, I think for me it's, since like I said, it's the biggest difficulty for me right now is just like to get that afterburner going. And I think the best way for me right now, I would not recommend that to everybody, but for me the races are also just yeah, training. I mean, it's basically the best simulation you can get is to actually sign up for a race, right? So yeah, so therefore more, let's do more, and then I'll see if I keep progressing like I did in the last 3-4 weeks. I should be able to chip away a lot of the time within the next 2 months. But I mean, that's always the idea, is the first 90% of the low-hanging fruits are pretty easy to harvest, but then it gets tough. So we'll see. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, mate, personally, we will see you in Vienna. I'll be there. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Great to connect again. And once again, thanks so much for jumping on short notice as well. And I'm really keen to see what you can do in this sport. I feel like you'll be a force to be reckoned with after a couple more races under your belt, mate.
Age group 50 plus.
That's exactly right. Exactly
Cheers,
right.
man.
Yeah, mate.
Have a good one.
We'll talk
Bye.
soon. Thanks, guys.